Hello everybody and welcome to the Board Gamer Girl channel. I'm Natalie and I like to talk about board games a lot, and so much so that I came over to YouTube because Instagram did not have enough space for everything I had to say. Today we are here to talk about a game from Ivy Studios called Veiled Fate. Big surprise! Veiled Fate is a game designed by Max Anderson, Zach Dixon, and Austin Harrison. The art is by Harry Conway, and it is a delightful game of what they term as strategic deduction. So in Veiled Fate, you play as a divine being where you have sired a demigod down to humankind, only known to you, only known because every player takes one demigod from this deck and keeps it to themselves in order to try to get the most renown. 12 renown is the goal, but how do you get there? You'll strategically be able to manipulate the board in order to go through positional play to try to move any of the demigods. So let's get a bit into the turn structure that you will be doing throughout the game. So at the beginning of every age, every player will get up to 5 fate cards into their hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We will pretend that I took 5 cards. Anyways, your fate cards will consist of either scorpion cards or feather cards. There will also be cards in the deck that just have a number written with a square, and that symbol just means that you're adding fate cards to a fate deck. Now, where do we put these fate decks? Well, typically you'll be using these cards in order to place votes for different quests. 2 of the actions that every player will have on the beginning of their turn is to either move a demigod or use a god power. These fate cards can be used to utilize any of the god powers summarized on this handy dandy little aid that Ivy Studios have provided. The other thing, which 90 to 95% of the time you'll probably be doing, if not all the time, is just moving your demigod character. As a divine being, you are free to move any of the demigods and not just your own. So let's say I'm gonna move this demigod. And on my turn, I can move this demigod into any land or onto a quest card, but I can't move it into the abyss or into the pools. You only end up in the abyss or the pools by different kinds of actions, such as smiting. Smiting ends up sending a demigod as a punishment, maybe, who knows, into the abyss where they have to kind of dig themselves back up in order to go to the central board to enter the city. More on that a little later. Your demigod will move into a land or onto a quest card. Now that my demigod is on a quest card, I now have to take 1 fate card from my hand and put it face down into this fate deck pile for that quest. Once a quest card has no more spots for demigods to move into, then we'll resolve that quest card. Sometimes, just before you resolve the fate deck for that quest card, the quest card will ask you to name 1 or 2 people to add an extra fate card to the deck before resolving. What you'll be doing is you'll be flipping over cards to figure out who has the majority, scorpions or feathers. Based on the result, each demigod will go down the quest card. If the majority voted scorpions, then some demigods will have good effects like getting renown, which are victory points, or they'll get bad effects such as having to go down on renown or even get smited down into the abyss like mentioned before. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. There's other items like the city card, so every time a demigod comes into the central area, which is deemed the city, you'll be able to move a marker around whatever the city card is, which typically gives characters either more fate cards, renown. You might get smited if you land in that space, so the demigod that enters the city will just go back into the abyss. Really annoying, but it happens. And then at the end of every age card, there are 3 ages, and you'll have to resolve one of these. So at the beginning of the round, the first player will read the age card so that everyone is aware of what we might be voting on at the end of a round. But anyone that has fate cards left at the end of the round can vote as many times as they want on a particular result. And these quest cards will have a result for either ties or wins for either case. But when it comes to a quest card, if there's a tie, you get to flip this fancy little metal coin that Ivy Studios has provided. And that is basically Veiled Fate in a nutshell. Hopefully you followed along well enough. It's a simple enough rule set, but let me put these fate cards back on the deck, because now we're gonna get into my experience with Veiled Fate. And to get into that, I think I'm going to get into a bit more of my history in order to explain how I've ended up finding this as one of my favorite deduction styled games. So I originally started as a solo gamer, and therefore social deduction would not really work with just myself. And most people would probably start off with something like One Night Ultimate Werewolf or Night of the Ninja, but no. It was, I think, still COVID, and we were in lockdown, and I was invited to try Blood on the Clock Tower as my intro into social deduction games. Not only that, I had to learn to play it on Discord and without the fancy app from Pandemonium Institute. Fun fact, I hate talking on the telephone, so having to play a game this way was a big deal. It was a bit overwhelming, especially for someone entering the genre, let alone someone who may just be a casual gamer, because every single character has a certain role, there's a narrator who kind of controls the events, and you heavily have to socialize for the game to work. These things put together, plus being on like my earbud setup to play, made the game exciting because of the people that were there, but it was a table of a whole bunch of people that I didn't know in real life. So it took me probably about a year until I played another social deduction game. What I found with social deduction is I could really like it, but it's very group dependent. And again, everyone has to be comfortable with socializing. And if you're not an extrovert, or at least versatile, which I guess I am now, and people who get very uncomfortable with lying and deceit in a game, then it's kind of limited to who you can invite to a game. And you very much need a lot of people to play one of those games for it to be a good game. At least that's what I found. Some of these aspects, I think, make it hard to get people to play a deduction game. And when I found this game, and it's strategic deduction, I feel like with the groups I've had, we are like social and table talking to go through the game, but I don't find that it's as dependent as other deduction games that I've played. And then there's just straight up deduction where you can play things like Mr. Jack or The Search for Planet X, and they're just deduction. And therefore you don't even need to talk. You're just figuring out a logic puzzle. This is those two words colliding in the best way with a simple rule set, so it's so much more accessible to any kind of gamer that you bring to the table. I feel like there's strategy and manipulation and strategic positioning that you can do while manipulating the different demigods on the board. For players that are maybe more core gamers, they don't usually do social deduction, but I also found that this is a lot easier to teach and get casual gamers in, and there's not like a long rules teach you need to have in order to get into it, that the accessibility point is pretty high. And then just at the end of the game, it still gives you an experience. So Veiled Fate has kind of been this bridge in gapping the different gamers that I have in my life in order to have them access a deduction game that's got socialization but also strategy, where I now feel like this would be my go-to game to introduce people into the mechanic. I won't say it's like very, very light, but again, the rules are light, but there's depth in being able to do things and manipulate things, and every game is different. There's a variety of different city cards, of age cards, of quest cards that make it different, and especially the people around the table and how they play. And so a couple of points that I have to add on. I haven't played this game in under the 4-player count, I feel like a game like this shines the more players that are around the table, because you've got more perspectives, more people to play off of while you're playing a game. I think especially like 2 or 3 players might be a harder game, and especially one where I wouldn't suggest starting this game with only 2 to 3 players. I would suggest at least trying it with a larger group first, and then, you know, maybe if you've got an itch for it and there's like 3 people around, you can try it. Tell me how it is. Let me know in the comments. Yeah. Other thing, as most times with things that come out of Ivy Studios, the production quality is... That's a mic drop. I was trying to do a mic drop. I'm like the cool kids, right? Yeah. As well, there's another mode of play that comes in the game for 6 to 8 players where you can play in teams, and I haven't played that yet, but I have played up to 7 players, and we just decided to play it the regular way and not stretch ourselves into teams. And the extra excited little bit, attempt at a drum roll, Ivy Studios is coming out with not 1, but 2 expansions pretty soon to go into Veiled Fate. Now, I'm excited for that. I want to see what they bring to this game. It's already got a simple rule set, to see what the complexity would do in changing the environment, in how you're going to positionally manipulate the demigods and the different options that you have in every age. I feel like that'd be interesting, and I can't wait to see what comes out from that. But at the moment, this is my go-to deduction game when I've got more than 2 players. Now, say you're wanting to get into deduction and you'd rather try something where it's just a smaller player count, I'd suggest Mr. Jack, as it's pure deduction and an only 2-player game. But if you've got more than a couple of players, I definitely suggest trying out Veiled Fate. So this has been a fabulous time, and I can't wait to see you guys again. Well, I don't get to see you, do I? I can't wait to talk into a camera lens, which is actually talking to you in my next video. I love being awkward. See y'all next time on the Flippity Flip. In Veiled Fate, you play as a divine god. Yeah, that's right. Makes me think of Persepolis or Persephones or that story. They will ask for a particular person to be asked to add a fate card to the deck anonymously. That doesn't make sense. And the game we are looking at today is called Veiled Fate. It's a game from Ivy Studios. I already said that. What the hell? So this has been great, but I'm tired now.